Combine Tuesday here on Birds 365. Mac and our buddy Les Bowen. If you're looking for Les's insights above and beyond what he gives you here when he joins us on Birds 365, you can get him at his website, lesbowensjawn.com. Les Bowen, are you okay with the fact that you're not going to the combine, relieved at the fact you're not going to the combine, or kind of antsy with the fact that you're not going to the combine to be able to ask Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman questions today?
Well, see, that's the thing, Jody, that today I would love to be there because, talking to getting to ask questions of Nick and Howie in the offseason is a precious opportunity. You don't get much of that. The rest of it I could kind of do without. I don't get excited about guys 40 times.
Yeah.
I don't
medical
care.
testing, which is very important.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you ever look at the benchmarks, like the guys that really blow away drills in the combine, a lot of times they're guys that didn't turn out to be great players. Tavon Austin ran a great 40. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reason you go is to talk to people. And, that's one of the few things the NFL hasn't screwed up yet in terms of media access. Although some teams are trying to do that.
Yes.
Some teams the coaches are staying home.
Oh, yeah.
Because they can get more done at the facility. What the hell are they doing at the facility? It's February. The draft and free agency.
It's clearly less. It's clearly about not having the talk, I think.
Yeah.
There's 12 coaches who weren't on the schedule. 12. And there were 6 GMs who weren't on the schedule. Now, it's always subject to change. I haven't checked it in recent days if anybody was a last-minute addition, but I'm pretty sure those 12 coaches aren't showing up.
So you have the interviews with the prospects there. And, of course, you can watch a taped interview, but you're not asking any questions in that setting. You can, the agents for the pending free agents are all there. And this is where
that's the more important part. Yeah.
This is where a lot of these deals get done is in Indianapolis 2 weeks before free agency.
Yes.
When you're legally not allowed to talk to these guys. So if you're not involved in that, I just don't. It's bizarre to me to go to that length that you have to, like, you have a game next week that you have to be at the facility. That's just one of the strangest things I've ever heard.
Yeah, I always get a kick. Last year it was TJ Edwards. What was it? 13 minutes after legal tampering begun, which is an oxymoron, obviously. He's got a deal done with Chicago. Magically, they just picked up the phone and got a deal done in 13 minutes. That to me is the biggest part of it. You got to lay the foundation for these legal negotiation. That's what it really is, period. That's where you lay the foundation. So for a GM not to be there, that to me is a bigger deal than the coaches.
Oh, yeah.
The coaches is bad enough, but for a GM not to be there, it's absurd. And things are changing in the NFL, no question about it. But if you were there, Les Bowen, and, what's the first thing you want to ask? I'll say both. Howie Roseman's going to go first, and then Nick Sirianni. Give me the first, Les Bowen. What do you want to know right off the bat?
Well, I think a lot of the questioning will involve the changes in the coaching staff, but I still want to know what the hell happened in the last 7 weeks of the season.
I think we all do. I think
it's never happened before in the history of the NFL. And a 10-1 team has never finished like this in the history of the league. What is your explanation for this, and how are you going to keep it from happening again? And A.J. Brown is talking last week on the radio about players didn't execute. Well, that's an Andy Reid answer. I mean, what does that mean? Why didn't they execute? Did they just suddenly stop executing at a certain point in this season for reasons unknown to all of us? I mean, I still want to know what happened to this team, because I think until you get past that, it's really hard to project whether they're going to be a terrible team or a good team next season.
Here's a question I would ask, and again, half of these questions we know we're not going to get an answer, and or they're going to be, as you just described them, Andy Reid-like answers, answering without answering. How did the process go to decide to fire the two?
Yeah.
That's a Howie question more than a Nick question, because Nick was just informed of it and he accepted it, but I don't think it was his call. He supposedly set the wheels in motion by pushing Desai upstairs. But what do you think Howie's answer? How do you think he'll dance around? Yeah, Jeffrey and I sat down and we decided we need to coordinate.
Yeah.
Other than
that'll be, maybe we'll get, as we watched the final weeks play out, it was evident that, things weren't being communicated properly. I don't know. I mean, you don't trash coaches after they leave you traditionally in the NFL.
You just trash them behind the scenes.
Right. So I don't know what they'll say exactly, but we should all be there. These would be great questions. But Jody that's a very good question. How did they come to this decision that this was what they needed to do? You have, I think Mike Sealski pointed out yesterday in his column, again, going back to AJ Brown, AJ was claiming it wasn't the coaches. So, somebody Mike would have loved to have asked AJ, as I would have, okay, how come they fired them then? If it didn't have anything to do with the coaches.
By the way, Les, there's a lot of offensive coaches that were not fired. So I don't know about you, but when this first came down, I assumed, and on the defensive side, and first of all, I think everybody's on board with Vic Fangio. I think Nick's happy with it. I think Howie's happy with it. I think Jeffrey's happy with it. So I put Vic off to the side. That's who they wanted originally, and they finally got him. So I put him off to the side. But the offense is a little bit more interesting to me, because that's Nick Sirianni's ballywick. That's his offense. As long as I'm going to be here, it's going to be my offense, Les, until Jeffrey Lurie tells me it's not going to be my offense. But guess what? The running back coach is still there. The offensive line coach, rightfully, is still there. The tight ends coach is still there. The wide receivers coach is still there. Everybody's still there.
With the offensive guru or whatever he is,
the overseer of the offense is still there.
Yeah.
So the only people gone are Brian Johnson, the play caller, and Alex Tanney, the quarterbacks coach, who both landed on their feet. Brian in Washington, Alex with Shane Steichen in Indy. But it seems to me they say the vast majority of coaches on the offense are doing a really good job.
Yeah.
And you could argue that they were top 10 in every meaningful category.
Yeah.
If you kind of look at avoid that 1-6 finish, but overall they were top 10. So what does that mean when you say all these guys are doing a great job? Let's bring them back, but let's bring in Kellen Moore.
Well, two things. One is that as fans and media speculated all season, you're saying that a big problem was the play calling, the selection of what you were going to do, rather than the preparation of the players, the coaching of the players during the week. The other thing is you're bringing in Kellen Moore. It's supposedly going to be his offense, and he's getting his quarterbacks, you got two guys. You got a quarterbacks coach, Doug Nussmeier, and an analytics guy. Right.
So you got to bring in two guys.
It's not like you're just sort of pasting him into Sirianniville the way that the 49ers tried to put Steve Wilks into the defensive coordinator position and
go be D'Amico Ryans.
Yeah, go be D'Amico Ryans. Yeah, they're not quite doing that, but is it really going to be Kellen Moore's offense with all of Nick's assistants?
That was my question.
It's going to be something to watch. Yeah. It really is. It's going to be it's going to be a story that will be written many, many, many times, I think, over the offseason and training camp and preseason and early season, as things work out or don't work out. It's, you know, how different is the offense going to be? I don't know.
And it's a key question for the Eagles next year, and we'll start analyzing it in first practice, certainly first preseason game, and then all importantly when the regular season starts. Is it Kellen Moore's offense, or is it Kellen Moore trying to run Nick Sirianni's offense? John was saying yesterday, as by judging the staff, sounds like Nick has still got his swag, that it's still going to be a heavy Nick Sirianni offense, because they didn't change out the coaches. But I did the research. When Kellen Moore moved from the Cowboys to the Chargers, you know how many coaches he brought with him from Dallas? One, Doug Nussmeier. All the other coaches on the Chargers offensive staff last year were retained, were there the year before, kind of like the Eagles right here, right now. They're keeping.
Was that an overwhelming success?
No, and Herbert got hurt at the end of the year. That kind of throws it out of whack. I wouldn't call it a success, but I wouldn't call it a failure either.
Right.
In hiring Kellen Moore, you're hiring the 5 years they put in, the 4 in Dallas and the 1 in Los Angeles, and the 1 in Los Angeles is not the highlight year. But some coaches are like that. I said this to John yesterday. When Doug Peterson got hired to be the Eagles coach, they asked him about his coaching staff, and he said, "Yeah, whatever you want, Howie."
Yeah, he didn't.
I'm good. You're making me the head coach. I'll take whoever you got
those
for
kind
me.
of connections in the NFL. You know, he hadn't really been in the NFL as a coach, that, you know, as a higher level coach for very long. And
he crazily stuck with Andy Reid. I always thought that was the dumbest explanation to me, Les, from this perspective. When people would talk about Doug Peterson, he hasn't had enough jobs. He hasn't been in enough places. What do you want him to be? With an unsuccessful coach so he can be fired, so he can go meet a bunch of people? It never made any sense to me from a logical perspective. If you want to be a head coach in this league, stick by Andy Reid, unless you're Eric Bieniemy, and there's some other issues that people fail to acknowledge there. But most people get head coaching jobs. So it would have been crazy. Hey, you know, Andy, I got to go get more experience. I'm going to leave maybe the best coach of the generation. Never made any sense to me. But to Jody's point, it's a different situation. Kellen Moore got scapegoated in Dallas, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not his fault. In this situation, it was phrased that Nick had to get fresh ideas, new ideas. You saw it on the defensive side with Vic Fangio, who, you know, Vic was allowed essentially to bring in a bunch of different guys. Offensively, that's what I thought was going to happen, to get the fresh ideas, not the staleness.
Yeah.
That, let's be honest, well, whatever you want to put on, some of those guys have to do with the staleness. I thought the assumption was we got to bring in a bunch of new, fresh faces. Yeah. And it turned out to be the exact opposite. It surprised me, to be honest. That's so many.
A little bit. You know, if you go one by one on those guys.
Stoutland didn't surprise
Aaron
me.
Moorhead's the only guy there that I really thought was gone. I mean, I don't know whether the tight ends coach did a good job or not. I mean, who the hell knows? You know,
that's exactly
the running back coach. The running backs were fine. Swift had a wonderful year. You know, I didn't see any, you know, they weren't running in the wrong direction. They couldn't pick up the blitz real great, but, you know,
nobody can.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think it's like a giant ticking time bomb or anything, but I did think he'd get a wide receiver.
Well, it's not. I would say this, Les. I don't think any of them did a bad job. It's not like I'm saying they should. I don't think Brian Johnson should have been fired. Okay. I think you have to grow, and Michael Clay's evidence of that. I think young coaches have to grow in a position. Right. And if you're hiring young coaches and you don't expect growing pains, that's on you, because it's going to happen. But from the perspective, so I think, you know, people did solid jobs, but I look at the defensive side, like DJ Elliott. Nobody knows DJ Elliott. He was the linebackers coach. I don't know if he did a good job, bad job. People say they didn't have good linebackers. Is that DJ Elliott's fault? I mean, that poor guy, he had to get, they got Zach Cunningham in August.
Right.
They got Shaq Leonard, you know, in the season. Oh, go get him ready. Go get him ready to play at a high level. who had a tougher job than DJ Elliott?
And you
Did
had
he
other
just have
guys
to
like
get-
Morrow in and out with injury. And it was chaos. And, you know, the thing you had with the defense was, as one of the analysts said, you know, it looked like they were playing 3 different schemes at the different levels of the
That's
defense.
true. That's true.
That you have to lay on Desai, I guess, but it also had to do with the chaotic personnel situation. So I don't know, but
yeah,
it's there's a lot. You know, I was thinking also while we were talking here, one of the things, if I were in Indianapolis, that I'd be looking to do would be to bump into Brian Johnson or Alex Tan.
Oh yeah.
If they are there,
or Sean Desai,
wearing their new warm-ups.
No,
Sean
Desai's not there.
Got no chance.
Yeah,
he's on the Rams.
He's on
the Rams don't even acknowledge the combine, let alone show up in it. Let alone a guy who got hired 2 days ago.
He's on the beach.
He's got no chance to be there. You can look for Sean Desai. Where's Waldo would be easier to find than Sean Desai.
Well, I'd be more interested really in Johnson and Tanny, because the offense is the real problem to figure out, I think. With the defense and what happened with Desai, I mean, I think we kind of understand. The defense was horrible, you know, and with the offense, I don't understand at all what happened. And I would love to delve into that more, but I'm not there. So maybe somebody will bump into him. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, if go ahead, Jody.
I'll get you to speculate a little bit here, Les, because it's something we'll probably never be told directly on or off the record on this one, John. How much say is Fangio going to have in player personnel? Starts today. Howie season officially starts today with guys working out at the combine. We got to wait till the new year starts before free agency. They're all doing their evaluations, come up with reports and game plans and everything else. How much is Desai really got gravitas to say, here's a player I need for my defense? Here, Howie, you got to go beyond what you think you spend for this guy. This is the spot that we have to put most of our efforts into. How much are they going to let Desai as a defensive coordinator?
Fangio.
What I say, Desai, excuse me, Fangio, thank you. Be a real loud voice in the room about the moves they're going to make to upgrade the defense.
Well, I would hope that they're going to give him a big voice, as long as he's not, you know, trading away Jalen Carter or something. You don't bring him in and then say, okay, you don't think you have the right people here, but go ahead and run your defense anyway. You know, I would think he'd have a lot to say. And but that's one of the things that, you know, we haven't laid eyes on Vic Fangio and as an Eagle yet, or talked to him or anything like that. So, you know, we don't really know. I guess that's one of the things Howie will be asked today.
Yeah,
perhaps
should be.
Here's my concern, because we've seen this scheme for 3 years now, Les, at different levels. Really good in year 2, second in the NFL, really bad in year 3. But the same scheme in essence, different guys running it.
Right.
And we're going to have the same scheme again. And I think it's going to be better taught. And I think the players are going to be better prepared, because it's a big scheme and it's not some disciple trying to copy it. I think that's always the best case scenario. But I got problems with this scheme.
Yeah.
And a lot of people look at free agents, understandably so, and they look at the draft and they say, I want this guy and I want that guy. We just had Jalen Ramsey, pretty good cornerback. You should hear Nick Sirianni rave about Jalen Ramsey, talking about Xavier Howard, Miami Dolphins, 2 of the best press corners in the NFL over the past number of years. They didn't like it. Jalen's out there taking shots. I'll never forgive that guy for how he used us.
Yeah.
You know, I saw somebody say Kyle Duggar is a free agent who's sort of that modern hybrid linebacker safety. They don't use that. They want coverage safeties. So if you're looking at L'Jarius Sneed, what good is a press corner? If you're going to play quarters and cover 2 and cover 6, what good does that do you? Why
actually Rasul Douglas is the kind of guy that
yes. Why are you spending $20 million on a press corner?
Yeah.
So I think people buyer beware on some of these big names.
That's a really good point. But it's free agency is going to be fascinating because I was talking to Zach Berman last week, and he was anticipating that all of the top edge rushers would be franchised.
Yeah.
Turns out none of them apparently are going to be franchised from what I'm reading.
I don't know yet. You could try.
I read that, the Carolina is not expected to franchise Brian Burns, and Jacksonville is not expected to franchise Josh Allen, and the Jets are not expected to franchise Bryce Huff. I don't know why.
The Jets. I expected Allen and Burns to get franchised, and there's still time. I think the deadline is.
It could happen. But I'm reading from people that supposedly know these things that it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So would you rather pay one of those guys than Hassan Reddick? I don't know.
They're going to get more.
Yeah, they are. Oh, they should. I mean, that's the crux of the argument with Hassan Reddick. Is he one of those guys?
Yeah.
He was for 1 year.
And with Hassan Reddick, I think, if you think about his first year here, that's when the Eagles were dominating. They were ahead.
Yeah.
He's great when you're winning by 10 points in the fourth quarter and he's got his ears pinned back. He's phenomenal. If you're in a tight game and everything's still on the table, not as good.
Run at him.
Yeah, exactly. The whole offense, not as good. So I think he's great, but you got to have him in the right position. And he's probably not the most well-rounded edge rusher.
No. And neither is Sweat. And can you have those two guys as your dominant, as your guys that get most of the snaps on the edge? I mean, neither one of them can set an edge. Sweat's a guy, what you just said about Reddick applies to Sweat in spades. If you line Sweat up against a really good offensive tackle, you're never going to hear from him again. He feasts on bad players mostly. Reddick is a little different. I think Reddick has a little more explosiveness than Sweat has. But,
by the way, Vic's going to drop Reddick more than JG, maybe even more than Sean Desai, maybe even more than Matt Patricia if he's here. Josh Sweat as well.
We'll see about that. And John will tell you, I chastised Howie Roseman for not going out and getting Rasul Douglas at the trade deadline this year. I thought he'd be a perfect fit for the Eagles. He was available. Bradberry was struggling. I thought he'd come in. Yeah. He can play the slot. He's a versatile guy who can play inside and outside. He's probably better outside than he is in the slot, but this was before Maddox came back. I thought Howie dropped the ball when they didn't get Rasul Douglas, and I think he'd be a fit in the Fangio defense this year with Vic running it. So you and I saw that one the same. Here's my issue with the two Eagle edge guys who had drop-off years this year. You think it had anything to do with TJ Edwards not being behind him? That they kind of stuck out a little bit more because you didn't have a tackling machine at linebacker playing behind them like you did the year before when TJ Edwards was in there? I'll suggest that that's part of the problem, that I'm not going to drop it all in their two laps and go, oh, my God, they both fell. Why we're getting on Bradberry's case because he had a bad year and looked bad. Well, so did the two defensive ends. Yeah, there's the relationship between the linebackers and the defensive end against the run, and the Eagles just didn't do enough to get the linebacker position up to snuff.
Right.
So that's
on when them. The defensive tackles were really tearing it up there for a while. I thought the edge rushers looked fine. They were getting sacks once Hassan Reddick got the cast off his hand and all that. I thought everything was just Jim Dandy with the defensive line for a very limited time. And then when the defensive tackles dropped off, the whole thing just disintegrated. But you're right. They did not have the linebackers plug in the gaps. And it was ugly. I want to rewind to Rasul because I want to connect it to DeAndre Swift, and Les was there. So one thing I say about Rasul, and I think a lot of people never really think about, is that I don't know if you remember when Rasul first got here as a third-round pick last year. He was one of the nicest kids. He just was so engaging. Great backstory.
Tremendous.
Yeah.
But when he left, he was miserable. I mean, he did not want to be here.
Yeah.
And, certain things, and that's why I bring it up. And I'm not saying DeAndre Swift is miserable, but I don't think he was happy in this particular offense because I think he thinks he could be utilized more in the passing game, and the Eagles haven't done that. Maybe Kellen Moore can do that. I don't know. But the point is, I think the Eagles have to sell it to DeAndre Swift. However, you were talking about the edge rushers. None of the running backs are getting franchised again. So
Right.
Saquon's going to be out there. Josh Jacobs is going to be out there. Derrick Henry's going to be out there. Anybody else I'm missing, Jody? All these big name backs are going to be out there that are going to generate more money than DeAndre Swift. In theory,
DeAndre could end up back here. I see what you're getting to.
In theory, but does he want to be back here?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. I mean, it's his hometown, and I think he likes that part of it. What are going to be the changes? How is the offense going to be different? It's a new coordinator. I'm sure he would like to know what Kellen Moore's thoughts are with that. That's a very good point. And the whole running back thing is funny to me because in Giants world, I'm sure Jody's a little plugged into this, being a New York guy. In Giants world, what's going to happen with Saquon Barkley is like the key to their season. It is.
That's a bad position to be in.
He's getting toward the end, running back. Whether he's with the Giants or not isn't going to affect their wins and losses very much at all. It's.
Yeah, I disagree with you on that one. I do agree that it's a pretty big deal for them. And
they can find another running back who can
find another running back
yards a carry or whatever.
I don't want to.
Isn't that easier said than done? Just go find a running back.
It is.
Not really.
I don't want to build on a running back. I think they've tried to build on a running back. Right. It hasn't worked. It just doesn't work. It's nice to have one. You need one in the playoffs.
And that McCaffrey guy did a pretty good job uplifting the 49ers, I'd say.
And
well, that's the guy, but he's not strictly a running back. And if he were available, he'd be worth almost anything. But that's the only guy in the league that.
But even Christian McCaffrey, you have to be in the right spot. Right. Christian McCaffrey was in Carolina. He didn't mean anything. They're still great player, best player. I mean, they're not ready. It's great to have a great running back when you have a great roster and a great team. It's great, but you saw it in San Francisco. But when you have a bad team and a bad roster and you're trying to build on a running back, the Giants have already been down that road. Turn the page. Turn the page and start building the right way. I would argue with the Giants.
And with the, as you mentioned, 3 guys, top running backs in the league who aren't going to be franchised this year. It doesn't really change DeAndre Swift and or any other running back's position because of those 3 teams. Who's the guy who they're just going to elevate and make their number 1 back? Tennessee, I don't think so. Raiders, I don't think so. Giants, I don't think so. None of them have the great young back that was being held back behind the veteran 1,000-yard rusher. So guess what? The Giants, the Titans, and the Raiders are just added to the list of teams that are going to be in the mix.
You think you're going to just swap running backs all around? Yeah, I guess that's possible. I think you can draft one in the 2nd round, and be just fine. But
if you're Kansas City, you can draft one in the 7th round.
Yes, you can. Fine. Yeah, one from Vineland.
Yeah. I wouldn't count on that though.
Yeah.
But I expect the Eagles' leading rusher to be TBD, Lesbo, and to be determined. And I think the most likely scenario is it's going to be a draft pick and probably a day 2, maybe that 3rd round pick, that 3rd round compensatory pick. But you got to get it right. You got to evaluate correctly.
Right.
And that's easier said than done. But I don't think the Eagles want to pay that position.
No, they definitely don't. Yeah. And I'm kind of with them on that,
Fresh ideas, though. Does that change? Does that include Howie Roseman? Did they come off last season, Les, and say, all right, we got to pay a little bit more attention. DeAndre played well, so I don't think it's about running back, but certainly linebacker.
Linebacker and safety. Yeah. I think the league has changed a lot of their ideas are the same, Joe Banner, Andy Reid ideas from 15 years ago about what defenses, what you prioritize in a defense. Problem is offenses have changed so much, and the middle of the field is so much of a bigger deal now than it was 15 years ago. I think Andy has certainly made that change in Kansas City, but
yeah,
I don't think Howie has. I think they do need to. I've been very critical of the way they handle linebacker. I don't think you need to draft a linebacker in the first round, although drafting 22nd, it wouldn't, there's probably a linebacker that could be 22nd overall. I don't know. But
not this
you
year.
do need to find good
Most
ones.
years.
You can't just, the way Howie has approached this for several years now is kind of whatever shows up. If somebody gets rid of a safety or a linebacker and you're in training camp and you pounce, but otherwise you're just throwing out there whatever you found in unrestricted, undrafted free agency. And, some years you've got TJ Edwards and some years you've got Alex Singleton and some years,
yeah. Well, I was looking, it's funny. I was doing a sort of fits miss thing for SI about free agency. And I was looking at the linebackers and I'm saying to myself, all right, what's an Eagles linebacker? And I saw Tyrell Dotson from Buffalo, who played because Matt Milano got hurt. And he played really well. But he's undersized, he's fast, he's quick. He'll probably get a 1-year, 2-year deal. Very cost effective. I said, that's an Eagles linebacker right there.
Yeah. Could be. Yeah.
And I don't know if they go above that. And I go back and now, supposedly they were in on Drew Tranquil last year and he ended up winning Super Bowl with Kansas City. He could have helped, but I don't think he's a dominant player.
No.
A lot of people look at Josie Jewell because he worked with Vic Fangio in Denver. A lot of people look at the kid in Tennessee, Al Shire, because he worked with the new linebackers coach. But I think he'll be too expensive. They got to do something though. And
they also need to address it again in the draft. The last real draft pick they used there was Davion Taylor. He's gone.
Davion.
So, that's part of the problem is, that was their third round.
Nakobe, they so
right. Other than Nakobe.
They have to get Nakobe. They have to get it right.
They have to, Nakobe has to be, I think we talked about this previously, but when Howie gave his one postseason press conference before this, I was a little bit surprised at the way he came down to, Nakobe Dean waving the Nakobe Dean flag. Oh, yeah. Clearly they expect, they're going to have a leadership turnover on defense with the most prominent leaders either not being back next year or taking maybe in Brandon Graham's case, a ceremonial role almost. They're pinning a lot on Nakobe Dean. And I know he's been hurt, but when he hasn't been hurt,
I haven't seen much.
Yeah,
not a big sample size.
He hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been good.
No,
there's a lot pending there, that's for sure. And can he be healthy? Which has been my question. If you've seen the guy, he wouldn't be a real big safety, I don't think.
And if you don't think it was planned when Howie Roseman had his only speaking engagements since the season ended, that he specifically dropped Nakobe's name. He almost pulled a Sirianni. John and I have fun with this. Just every once in a while, Sirianni will go to a player. Won't necessarily be asked about a player. He'll be asked about something else. And he'll weave the conversation over to sing the praises of a player. Yeah.
Unprompted. The unprompted. Trey Sermon just bring Trey out of
nowhere. Quez Watkins out of nowhere. How he kind of did that with Nakobe and Zach Cunningham. He kind of went over the top, and Zach had a really good year for him.
Yeah,
an okay
I didn't
year.
get that.
He didn't light the scoreboard up. Let's not
No.
overstate it here.
No.
But he made Zach Cunningham sound like, wow, he's a key contributor for us, and we'd be lucky to have him back. So he's setting the table for. Don't get your expectations up too high about me being overly.
That's why I said Tyrell Dotson, baby. 1 year, $5 million. Go get him. Go get him.
But they do have some cap space now, especially with the cap going up so much.
Yeah.
And I think there's some easy ways for them to create even more space, by redoing some deals. It's not a matter of not having money. If they don't spend the money, it'll be because they don't like what's out there at the price. I don't think it's big. They always spend money. I mean, in terms of actual cash spent, they're always top of the league. But if they don't come away with top echelon free agents, it'll be because they don't like them, I guess. I don't know.
All right, let me ask each of you guys this question because you've got a good grasp on it as Eagle Beat guys. Trying to judge how much the powers that be, that would be Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, judge the criticism they may be getting from both the media and Eagle Nation fans and guys who cover the team. This is one that could come back to bite him in the butt because I think Jeremiah Trotter is going to be available in the second round. He's not going in the first, unless you said, maybe there'd be somebody in first. There's no linebacker that deserves to go in the first 22 picks in the draft this year. My evaluation, we'll see if it actually happens. Trotter's not going in the first. He's going to be available for them at least for their first second-round pick and maybe both of their second-round picks. If they pass on him twice and then he goes somewhere else and becomes a big-time linebacker, how much critique are they in for? Will they factor that in at all in their evaluation of Jeremiah Trotter Jr.?
I would not if it were me. I mean, I don't think that's something that you really worry about in terms of your evaluation of a player. Either he's somebody you want at that spot, or he isn't. Whether people are going to criticize you or not is, you can't be worried about that. I'm a little bit leery of Jeremiah Trotter Jr. in that there'd be so much pressure on him here to live up to that name. He's not 260 pounds like his dad was.
No.
The game has changed dramatically. Jeremiah Trotter couldn't cover me, in his prime. I mean, but he didn't need to. It was a different game. He was drafted in the 1990s.
No, you can't do business like that. To answer Jody's question, you can't do business. I joked, if you left it up to the fans, they'd draft Jeremiah Trotter Jr., they'd sign John Runyon Jr., they'd trade for Asante Samuel Jr.
Yeah.
You can't do business that way.
Right.
If you like the player, you draft him. We did our conference call with Daniel Jeremiah. He's got him as a third-round pick.
Yeah.
If the Eagles are in the same boat, you start thinking about him there. Maybe they like him. Maybe they don't like him. Maybe they like another linebacker better. But, you got to stick true to your evaluation and not get all warm in the cockles of your heart because the name says Trotter. And you bring up a good point, Les. Maybe there'd be more pressure on him in Philadelphia than anywhere else to live up to his father's reputation. So I agree with you there. Last one for me at Les Bowen, the great Les Bowen, I will say. Les Bowen's Sean, if you want to check out, I'm sure he'll be writing something about the combine. Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman speak today.
Yes.
Your old buddy Marcus Hayes wrote a column this morning. I had to ask
he loved the hand grenade in there.
Yeah, throwing a little bit, throwing a log on the fire. Love Marcus. About Nick Sirianni treating people differently. Jalen,
was he talking about Nick, or is he talking about the other coaches or the coaches?
No, he's talking about Nick and the coaching staff. So both.
Yeah.
Starting with Jalen and AJ. I always think of a Jimmy Johnson quote. It was a great quote to me. And Jimmy said basically to his players, I'll treat you all fairly, but I'm not treating you all the same. Saying, look, Emmitt Smith is Emmitt Smith.
Right.
He's got, doesn't everybody do that?
Yeah.
Like Jalen Hurts is the quarterback. AJ Brown's the star.
And it kind of struck me as these guys that said this to Marcus after the Arizona game, and then whenever he talked to the second guy, this is what happens when you lose.
Yes.
It wouldn't be I'm sure they didn't treat them any differently the year before when they went to the Super Bowl. This is the kind of thing people notice when things aren't going well. Could they have handled some guys better? I don't know. I mean, you have this, and it kind of runs head on into what AJ Brown said about, I was just mad that guys weren't doing their jobs. If AJ is one of the guys that was never criticized, well, first of all, what are you criticizing AJ Brown for?
Right.
Questions. What did he do?
Yeah.
Did he not block well enough? I don't know. It just seems like the kind of stuff that comes out when teams go bad. And that's one of the things they have to address. I'm not minimizing it in the sense that they have to get this thing back together and get these guys back together, pulling on the same oar. And I was surprised to see that. I sometimes have a naive view of professional sports. I think maybe I would hope that I would be smarter than to run around, saying things like that about, when it's just, there's that wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, no offense, but if you're a backup wide receiver and you're worried about the way AJ Brown is getting treated, I mean, either become AJ Brown, the same thing will happen to you in any city. That's kind of my perspective. Yes, star players get treated differently. Guess what? That's what happens in professional sports.
Right. The Jimmy Johnson quote you gave, I remember the player that begot that quote. Kervin Richards was their backup running back out of the University of Pittsburgh, and he fell asleep at a team meeting. Yeah. And they said, Kervin, hey, grab your bag. See you later. Bye. Go. So Jimmy was asked, would you have done it if Emmitt nodded off? And Jimmy's response was, he's Emmitt Smith. Yeah. Of course not. Yeah. There are different, if you don't think there's a totem pole in every National Football League locker room and they're treated differently, you're kidding yourself. Yeah, I love Marcus, but I'm not sure that I buy into
Marcus is just giving you information that he was told by Kerwin. Was it Kerwin? I don't even remember who that was. Richards.
Kervin Richards.
Richards. If you think you're going to be treated the same as Emmitt Smith, I mean, there's no self-awareness there.
Wake up and smell the coffee. Yeah, that's not going to cut it. All right, Les, we've had you on for a long time. I got one more question for you. It's quasi-Eagle related. Who will have the bigger role as a NFL analyst in-game or studio booth this upcoming year? Jason Kelsey or Bill Belichick?
Boy. I would probably rather listen to Kelsey myself, but that's a good, I've been struck by the fact that I guess Belichick's son put it out there that he's looking
to do TV. Yeah.
And you haven't heard any network jumping in there and grabbing him,
just like NFL teams. Yeah. Maybe he wants too much autonomy.
This is going to be fascinating to see. Kelsey's a more colorful personality and more of an everyman type. I would go with him over Belichick.
Are we going to get Kelsey news, by the way, Les? Should have asked that. I know we kept you way too long. This is when it usually happens at the Combine. The one year how we did the podcast, the 1 year Nick's talking about buying him the keg to get him to come back.
I think this has to be tough for him. Unless you win the Super Bowl, there is no good way to retire. I mean, last year you're 3 points away from winning it all, so you convince yourself that you're going to come back and get it done this year. Then now all of a sudden you're retiring off a horrible finish. Your final memories are terrible. You're taking the uniform off for the last time after an atrocious playoff loss. There's a push to, wouldn't you like to wash that out of your mouth, and have a real, but unless you win the Super Bowl, you just kind of keep doing that year after year after year after year. I don't know. I guess he is going to retire. I don't really know, but that'll be a huge problem for the Eagles on the field. I mean, that's the next guy up is probably a decent player, Juergens, but Jason Kelsey's.
Then you can bring in John Runyon Jr. to play guard. Think of it that way. Move Cam Juergens, sign John Runyon Jr.
There you go.
Going to become a domino effect. You can replace Kelsey, but then you got to replace Juergens. How do you replace Juergens? Well, you got to replace.
Right.
That's the issue. Les, good stuff. We appreciate it. Whenever you come on, check out his website. That would be LesBowensJawn.com. When he's not here with us, you can get all Les' insight reading them on his website. Les, thanks for doing it with us today.
Thank you, Les.
Les Bowen, former Eagle beat guy, still on top of the Eagles day in and day out, and good whenever he comes on with us. All right, Mac, quickie timeout and come back. I got one or two things I want to run by John before. Caden Steele is going to join us.
Yeah, debut, NJ.com, baby. Little colleague of Chris Franklin. What show is this? Number 7 what, Jody?
7-11. We're convenience store day.
7-11.
There's only going to be one 7-11, John. We'll have 712 tomorrow, and at some point 1,711. There will never be another 7-11 show here on Birds 365.
Should get a Slurpee. Should have had Slurpees.
Slurpees for all. And Caden Steele is, we'll find out if he's the Cam Juergens of Birds 365. At some point, is he going to step in for Chris Franklin over there at NJ.com? It's nice to have depth, but
Chris has got a lot of years left, man.
You think so? You think so?
Left.
I hear he's thinking about retirement. That's just the word
He was on vacation. He's out in Indy.
He's doing the Indy thing. Hopefully he gets a good question in for Harry Roseman and or Nick Sirianni. All right, Mac coming back with more Birds 365 in just a second. Stay with us. Oh, let me tell you, Eagles fans, here's your chance to save up to 40% on your car insurance right now from one of JAKIB Sports' great partners. Here's what you need to do. Call managing partner Jim or Fran and tell them you're a friend of both JAKIB Sports and Birds 365.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, managing partner at Del Val Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!